chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That quiet that has settled around your life this week, do not mistake it for absence. It is not emptiness, it is observation. The enemy is working overtime right now for one reason and one reason only. He has watched you do what he told every voice around you was impossible, and now he does not know what to do with you. It all shifts tomorrow. The silence, the waiting, the feeling that nothing is registering. But here is what you need to understand before we go any further. It is not shifting because of luck, and it is not shifting because the season finally decided to change on its own. It is shifting because of what you have done. Because of the steps you took when every logical reason told you to stop. Because of the prayers you prayed when your voice was shaking. Because of the morning you got up when you had every right to stay down. You did not find this recording by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. The Holy Spirit did. This is a divine appointment scheduled before the foundations of the earth, and you are standing at a threshold right now that very few people ever reach. Because very few people do what you have done. Stay until the very last second of this message, because in the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the exact decree that confirms what heaven has already ruled over your life. I am going to walk you through the specific moments this week where you moved in ways you did not fully understand, and I am going to show you why those moments were not ordinary. And at the end, I am going to give you a declaration that seals this season and silences the voices that told you it was impossible. Do not click away. Your future self is standing on the other side of this message, waiting for you to receive what was already decided on your behalf. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere around you has not been loud. It has been unusually quiet. And that quiet has a weight to it that is hard to describe to someone who has not felt it. Like standing in a room after everyone has just turned to look at you. Maybe you have been going about your day this week, running your errands, doing the ordinary things. And you have had this low, persistent sense that something has changed in the atmosphere around you. Not dramatically, not with a sign or a sound, just quietly, like a shift in pressure. Or maybe you woke up at 3 a.m. in the morning this week and you lay there in the dark with your heart unusually still, and for one moment, just one moment, you felt something you have not felt in a long time. Like you had finally crossed something, like something was finished. But then the morning came, and with the morning came the doubt. You feel suspended right now, like you are standing in the gap between what you survived and what you were promised. And in that suspended place, the enemy has started whispering a very specific lie into your thoughts. He is telling you that the quiet is not a shift, it is abandonment. He is replaying the moments where you looked foolish, the moment you took that step and nobody clapped, the moment you kept going and nobody noticed, the moment you chose to trust when everything in your natural mind screamed that you were wrong. The accuser is telling you that those moments of quiet faithfulness were embarrassments. He is telling you that the reason no one has publicly acknowledged what you have been doing is because it did not register. That you ran a race no one was watching. That you did the impossible and it did not count. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Psalm 23 verse 5 says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." Listen to what that promise is actually saying. Not in secret, not in a back room, not after the enemies have been removed. In their presence. Which means the people and the forces that doubted you, mocked you, wrote you off. They do not leave before your elevation. They are required to witness it. God does not just vindicate you privately, He seats you publicly, in front of the very audience that said you could not do it. That silence you feel around your life right now is not absence. It is the hush of an audience that has just watched you do the very thing they wagered you would never do. They are not gone, they are watching. The heaviness you feel is not the weight of being forgotten. It is the weight of being seen by the wrong people who now have no words for what they are witnessing. You are not in a void, you are on a stage, and the people who were loudest in their doubt are now the quietest in their observation. You thought moving in silence meant no one saw you. But let me reframe your reality right now. Every step you took in private was a performance in a theater you could not see. Every time you kept going when it made no sense, the audience leaned forward. Every time you refused to quit, the ones who bet against you shifted in their seats. And what they are sitting with right now, in their silence, is the undeniable evidence that you have done what they said was impossible. That is not weakness. That is dominion. Hit the like button if you feel this message arrived exactly when it was supposed to. Drop a comment below. What is one thing you did this week in silence that you now realize took more strength than you gave yourself credit for? And now that you understand that, now that you can see yourself not as someone forgotten in the silence, but as someone being witnessed in it, held in the gaze of divine love, even in the deepest stillness, I need to take you somewhere deeper. Because the revelation that just landed, that quiet acknowledgement of divine presence, is only the surface of what God is truly orchestrating in this moment. There is a layer underneath it, submerged like the vast, unseen part of an iceberg, a foundational truth that most people never reach. It is in this profound, hidden depth that your actual radical transformation is patiently waiting, like a seed ready to burst forth from the earth. This is where the true alchemy of the spirit occurs, turning your deepest fears into your greatest strengths. Here is what you have consistently called weakness, what you have quietly lamented as your failure to perform, but what heaven has consistently been calling warfare strategy. Every single time you pulled back from a conversation, an argument, or a confrontation that you instinctively knew would cost you your invaluable peace, you mistakenly thought you were shrinking, retreating into some form of cowardice. Every time you chose not to defend yourself with fervent words and righteous anger, when someone misrepresented your intentions or character, you silently told yourself that you lacked the courage, the backbone, the conviction to stand your ground. And every time you intentionally went quiet, when every fiber of your being, every passionate impulse within you wanted to prove a point, to exert your intellect or assert your dominance, you interpreted that profound restraint as an undeniable defeat, a surrender to external pressure. But I tell you now, with absolute certainty, you were not retreating from the battlefield of life. No, you were not running in fear. You were strategically repositioning. There is an enormous critical difference between a soldier who turns and runs from the intensity of the field, overcome by fear and abandoning their post, and a soldier who, with strategic wisdom, moves deliberately to higher ground. You, my friend, have been consistently moving to higher ground, often unconsciously, guided by an inner compass that knows divine wisdom. And from where you now stand on this elevated vantage point, you can clearly see the broader landscape, the intricate movements, and the profound implications of situations that the people still arguing, still caught in the fray on the lower field, cannot even perceive yet. You possess a clarity born of quiet observation, a perspective that transcends the immediate chaos and reveals the deeper divine order. This isn't weakness, it's the quiet strength of a master strategist. Think about David, not in the triumphant stories of his kingship, not David, the celebrated monarch with the crown gleaming upon his head and the adoration of a nation at his feet. Think instead of David in the raw, desolate wilderness, David hiding in the damp, echoing caves, running for his very life from the relentless, jealous pursuit of Saul. Picture him there, a hunted man, writing psalms of deep lament and unwavering praise in the suffocating darkness, with no visible throne in sight, no palace to call home, and absolutely no tangible evidence that the powerful anointing that had been poured over him as a teenager, marking him for destiny, still meant anything at all in his current desperate reality. He did not, in those moments of profound uncertainty and threat, attempt to defend the anointing bestowed upon him by divine grace. He did not hold a press conference to loudly announce to the world who God had unequivocally called him to be, despite the glaring absence of external proof. Instead, he went quiet. He waited. He submitted to the crucible of the wilderness. And while he waited, while he navigated the wilderness terrain and the even more treacherous terrain of his own soul, he learned invaluable lessons. He learned how to govern his own heart, to tame his own passions, to align his spirit with the divine will, long before God ever entrusted him with the immense responsibility of governing an entire nation. The wilderness, therefore, was not merely a frustrating detour from his glorious destiny. It was not a punishment or a mistake. The wilderness was the essential curriculum, the divine academy that made him capable, resilient, and spiritually mature enough to carry the immense weight of that destiny. It forged his character, sharpened his discernment, and deepened his reliance on God in ways that no kingly court ever could have. And this profound insight leads us directly to something most people miss entirely, a truth often overlooked in our haste for immediate gratification and visible success. The deep preparation you have been in, the extended season of growth and refinement you've navigated, was not simply about building your strength, though strength was certainly an outcome. More fundamentally, it was about profoundly protecting your character from a version of success, an elevation, a public platform that you were not yet fully equipped, spiritually and emotionally, to steward with grace and wisdom. Because God is not simply trying to give you a fleeting win, a momentary triumph that might quickly crumble under the weight of an unprepared spirit. He is meticulously trying to give you a sustainable, enduring win, a victory so deeply rooted in your character that you will not inadvertently destroy it once you have finally received it. He is not interested in catapulting you, ill-prepared and fragile, into a prominent room, a position of influence, or a sphere of blessing that you cannot maintain with integrity and peace. Every delay you have cursed, every moment you have desperately questioned the divine timing, every instance you felt overlooked or forgotten, was not, in truth, heaven withholding a blessing from you out of stinginess or indifference. Instead, it was heaven actively protecting you, shielding you from the potential pitfalls and destructive forces of arriving prematurely before your inner character was fully developed and ready to sustain the immense weight and profound requirements of the calling upon your life. It was a divine act of love, ensuring your long-term flourishing over short-term gratification, much like a master gardener carefully tending a delicate sapling, waiting for its roots to deepen before exposing it to the full sun. Stay with me. Lean in close, because what I am about to say next is the very piece of the puzzle that has the power to shatter the invisible chains and break the tenacious cycle for countless people who have found themselves circling the same mountain, encountering the same obstacles, and experiencing the same setbacks for years, sometimes even decades. This is the truth that will set you free from that repetitive pattern. You have been diligently praying, earnestly pleading, and passionately believing for that elusive door to finally open. The door to new opportunities, new relationships, new seasons of breakthrough. And while your prayers ascend, God in His infinite wisdom and mercy has concurrently been asking you a deeper, more penetrating question. Have you truly dealt with the thing, the unhealed wound, the unresolved trauma, the unreleased agreement that you will inevitably carry through that very door? Because if a wounded version of you, still carrying the echoes of past hurts and the baggage of unaddressed pain, walks into an elevated room, a new platform, a space of greater influence and vie, Civility, that wound does not miraculously stay hidden, neatly tucked away or suddenly dissolved. On the contrary, it expands, it magnifies itself, often becoming the defining feature of your experience in that new space. New platforms, new opportunities, and new levels of success do not possess the power to magically heal old fractures within your soul. Instead, with ruthless clarity, they expose them, bringing to the surface what was once hidden in the shadows. And God, in his profound, unwavering mercy, has been holding that door, not because he has forgotten the magnificent promise he made to you, not because he is delaying your destiny out of cruelty, but precisely because he loves you far too deeply, too intimately, to let you enter broken, fragmented, or unprepared into a sacred space that was meticulously designed from its very inception for your complete and utter wholeness. His delay is an act of divine compassion, a grace period for your healing. This is where the journey goes deeper, often into terrains most people are simply unwilling to explore, because it requires profound introspection and a courageous confrontation with self. Because the central question is no longer merely, when is that long-awaited door finally opening? That is the surface inquiry. The truly transformative question, the one that holds the key to your freedom, is, what are you still carrying? What old agreements? What worn-out identities? What limiting beliefs that was never meant to enter with you into this next elevated season? There are unspoken agreements you made, conscious or unconscious contracts you signed, in your lowest, most vulnerable moments, in the crucible of your deepest pain, that you have never formally, explicitly renounced or broken. These are the subtle vows of self-protection, the silent covenants with scarcity, the ingrained patterns of defeat. There are also insidious identities you unconsciously accepted, roles you stepped into when the pain was loudest, when the voices of your critics or your own inner critic were most deafening, identities that you are still, to this very day, unconsciously operating from. You told yourself, perhaps years ago, that you were inherently the person who never truly gets chosen, perpetually overlooked for opportunities and love. You convinced yourself that you were the one who always gets this close, tantalizingly close to breakthrough, and then inevitably loses it all at the last moment. You told yourself that the very people who abandoned you, who walked away and left you feeling desolate, were irrefutable evidence of your inherent unworthiness or your fundamental flaw. And these agreements, these silently accepted identities, not the external enemy, not the challenging circumstances, not even the frustratingly closed doors themselves, these internal agreements have been the invisible ceiling, the self-imposed barrier that has kept you from soaring into the fullness of your destiny. The Apostle Paul, with profound spiritual insight, writes in Romans chapter 12 that true lasting transformation begins not with a change in external conditions, but with the radical renewing of the mind. He doesn't say transformation begins with the renewing of the circumstances, although external circumstances often shift as a result. He doesn't say it begins with the renewing of the relationships, though healthy relationships are a beautiful fruit of a renewed mind. He specifies the mind, because the mind that was painstakingly formed and rigorously shaped in the hardest, most brutal seasons of your life, built a complex architecture, intricate structures of thinking, deeply ingrained patterns of interpretation, and pervasive default settings that filter every single new experience, every fresh opportunity, every potential breakthrough through the distorted lens of your old wounds and unhealed pain. This mental architecture, like an elaborate self-constructed prison, dictates how you perceive reality, interpret feedback, and react to life's ebb and flow. And until that deeply entrenched architecture is consciously and deliberately dismantled brick by brick from the inside out, until those old thought patterns are challenged and replaced with divine truth, you can walk through 1,000 open doors, be granted 1,000 new opportunities, and still, inexplicably, feel like you are locked out, isolated behind the invisible bars of your own internal constructs. The external freedom will feel like a cruel mirage if the internal prison remains intact. But here is what is coming, a monumental shift that I need you to actively prepare for, because it is arriving faster than you can possibly imagine. The moment where everything you have been privately building, everything you have been diligently cultivating in the quiet solitude of your spirit, will suddenly and undeniably become publicly visible. And let me assure you, this moment will not announce itself gently, with a soft whisper or a gradual unfolding. It will arrive suddenly, like the dawn breaking after the longest night, or a dormant seed bursting through the earth with unexpected force. And in that pivotal moment, the test will not be merely whether you are grateful for the breakthrough, though gratitude is a noble response. The true, profound test will be whether you are truly ready to be seen, fully and authentically, without shrinking back into the familiar, self-imposed smallness that for so long kept you feeling safe and protected during the extended season of waiting. Because some people, upon receiving the breakthrough they have prayed for, immediately begin to minimize it, to deflect praise, to make themselves less than what they are. They self-sabotage, not out of overt rebellion or malice, but out of a deep, often unconscious, subconscious belief that they are not truly supposed to have what they have just received. They make themselves small again, retreating from the expansive reality, because large, the feeling of true elevation, visibility and impact, felt inherently dangerous for so long that it became utterly unfamiliar, even terrifying to inhabit. They become accustomed to the struggle, to the shadow, and the light feels too intense. Do not let that be you. Coming up, I am going to show you exactly what that insidious self-sabotage looks like in real time, how it manifests in subtle ways, and most importantly, how to consciously stop it dead in its tracks before it costs you the very thing you have been passionately believing for, the very blessing you are destined to carry. This is a critical discernment, but first, this profound truth has to land, not just in your mind, but deep within the core of your being. The version of you that, by sheer will and divine grace, survived what you survived, the version of you that endured the impossible, is unequivocally not the version of you that is supposed to enter what is next. Let me say that again, slowly, with deliberate emphasis, because I need you to feel the weight and the liberating power of this truth. The version of you that gripped the edge of despair, that white-knuckled your way through the darkest, most harrowing seasons of your life, that version of you was built with incredible resilience for survival. And let us be clear, survival is an immense gift, a testament to your strength and God's sustaining hand. But survival mode, when left unchecked, when allowed to become your default operating system, tragically becomes a prison. It teaches you, often unconsciously, to perpetually expect loss, to brace yourself for the next inevitable impact, to scan the horizon for threats even when none are present. It makes genuine generosity feel reckless and irresponsible, as if every resource must be hoarded. It makes true rest feel like a dangerous indulgence, an irresponsible act when there's always a battle to fight. And if you carry that ingrained posture, that defensive crouch, that scarcity mindset into the next glorious chapter of your life, you will inevitably spend your elevation, your season of abundance and joy, waiting for it all to be cruelly taken from you, instead of fully and joyfully inhabiting it, cultivating it, and expanding within it. You will live with one foot still in the grave clothes of your past, unable to dance in the freedom of your present. This is the profound and necessary transition God is asking you to make right now, in this very moment of revelation. Not just a simple shift from one calendar season to the next, like spring turning to summer, This is a fundamental existential transition from one version of yourself to an entirely new, liberated version. It's a journey from the self that was painstakingly shaped, defined, and often limited by what you lacked, by what was withheld, by the voids in your life, to the self that is powerfully shaped, defined, and expanded by what you carry within you. Your divine purpose, your inherent gifts, your unshakable anointing. It's a shedding of the identity that was tragically written in the ink of your pain, etched into your consciousness by hardship, and a bold, courageous embrace of the true identity that was lovingly written, divinely ordained, before the very foundation of the earth was laid. Jeremiah the prophet heard it plainly and powerfully from the mouth of God. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. That profound, pre-existent knowing of God predates every single wound you have ever experienced, every scar you bear. That sacred calling upon your life predates every disappointment, every betrayal, every moment of perceived failure. The original design, the pristine blueprint of who you truly are in God's eyes, was not corrupted or marred by the hardship you endured. On the contrary, that divine design was miraculously preserved, refined, and even amplified through it, like a diamond forged under immense pressure, emerging more brilliant and resilient. The fire did not consume you, it purified you. And this brings us, perhaps uncomfortably, to the most challenging, yet most liberating part of this message, a truth that I do not always say out loud in its stark directness, precisely because it confronts something deeply uncomfortable, something profoundly unsettling to name and acknowledge. It requires a level of unflinching honesty with ourselves that can be initially jarring. The very thing that has been blocking you, that has created the persistent resistance and the seemingly impenetrable barrier to your next season, is not, in fact, what you think it is. You have, understandably, blamed the external enemy, the forces of darkness. And yes, let us acknowledge that there has been real, tangible opposition in your path, spiritual attacks that have been designed to hinder you. You have blamed the people who left you, who abandoned you in your hour of need, and yes, their absence, their betrayal, left genuine, aching marks upon your heart and soul. You have blamed the timing, the economic climate, the adverse circumstances, the doors that stubbornly refused to open, despite your most fervent prayers and desperate efforts. And indeed, some of those things were genuinely difficult, formidable obstacles in your journey. But underneath all of it, underneath every external obstacle, every visible adversary, every environmental challenge, there has been one critical thing subtly operating in the background, one quiet, persistent force that your own hands have been unknowingly, unconsciously, yet powerfully reinforcing without ever fully realizing it. It is an internal anchor, a silent agreement that has kept you tethered to a past you're meant to transcend. It is the profound, almost subconscious loyalty you have maintained to a story that is no longer, and perhaps never truly was, true about you. This is the crux of the matter, the invisible thread that binds you. You have been consistently faithful, with an almost religious devotion, to a narrative of yourself, a personal mythology that was tragically written in your absolute worst moment, in the crucible of your deepest shame, your most profound failure, or your most crushing disappointment. You have returned to that narrative, revisited its painful details, replayed its devastating conclusions so many times that it has, over time, started to feel like your immutable identity, an inherent truth about who you are, instead of merely a painful chapter of your history. You have meticulously curated your future expectations around the limitations and wounds embedded within that story. You have made significant, life-altering decisions from the perspective of that narrative, allowing it to dictate your choices and circumscribe your possibilities. You have interpreted every new situation, every fresh opportunity, every glimmer of hope through the distorted, pessimistic lens of that old, broken story. And every single time you did, you inadvertently took something new, something expansive, something truly miraculous that God was diligently trying to open and bestow upon you, and you instinctively measured it, diminished it, and dismissed it against the backdrop of a story that vehemently declared it could not happen for you. "Not for someone like you," the story whispered. "Not after everything that happened," it gravely affirmed. This narrative became a self-fulfilling prophecy, a protective cage you built around yourself. That story, that old limiting narrative, is the actual ceiling. Not the external enemy, not the fickle, fallible people who may have hurt you, not the elusive, unpredictable timing of the universe. The story, the one you continually tell yourself about yourself, that is the invisible ceiling holding you captive. And the profound reason this truth is so extraordinarily difficult to see, so challenging to identify and confront, is precisely because that story, in its nascent stages, kept you safe once. It was born out of a desperate need for self-preservation. It cleverly managed your fragile hope, carefully rationing it out so that you would not be utterly destroyed, shattered beyond repair by yet another crushing disappointment. It became a deeply ingrained protective instinct, a coping mechanism that served a vital purpose in a painful season. But here is the critical distinction we must make, a truth that must land with piercing clarity. Protection and limitation are not the same thing. A caterpillar's cocoon offers protection, but it must be shed for the butterfly to fly. A harbor protects a ship, but a ship is built for the open sea. And what once preserved you, what once shielded your tender spirit from further harm, has now, paradoxically, become the very agreement, the very internal contract that is holding the door shut from the inside, preventing your breakthrough, limiting your expansion. It's a lock whose key is held within your own grasp. This is the moment, precisely this present moment, that God has been patiently waiting for. Not for you to try harder, to exert more exhausting effort in your own strength. Not for you to pray louder, to bargain more fervently, or to fast longer in an attempt to coerce his hand. But for you to do something far more profound and transformative, for you to courageously release the narrative, to consciously, intentionally, and deliberately look at the story you have been living from, the one that has dictated your worth, your capabilities, and your destiny, and declare with unwavering conviction, "This is not who I am. This is merely what happened to me." And what happened to me, though it was real and painful, does not and will not get to decide what happens next in my life. I reclaim my authorship. When Jesus stood before the tomb of Lazarus, he did not quietly, surreptitiously slip in and revive him when no one was looking, performing a private miracle. No, he prayed loudly enough for the entire grieving crowd to hear, his voice echoing with divine authority and human empathy. He wept openly enough for all the witnesses to see his profound compassion and shared sorrow. And then, with an undeniable, resounding command that pierced the veil between life and death, he called Lazarus out, fully, publicly, undeniably, into the full light of day. But notice what happened next, a crucial detail often overlooked. Lazarus emerged from the tomb still wrapped in his grave clothes, still bound by the linen strips of death, still carrying the physical wrappings of what had held him captive in the realm of the deceased. And Jesus, in a profound act of empowering humanity, did not personally unwrap him. Instead, he turned to the people standing there, to the community, to those who had witnessed both the death and the resurrection, and said with powerful instruction, "Loose him and let him go." This was a command not just to the people, but a spiritual decree to the atmosphere itself. You, my beloved, have been called out. The spiritual resurrection has already happened within you. The divine life force has been ignited. The promise has been affirmed in the spirit realm. But you, like Lazarus, are still wearing some of the grave clothes. You are still wrapped in the language of the tomb, speaking the words of your past pain, identifying with the limitations of a season that is already unequivocally over, sealed and closed by God Himself. You are still moving, thinking, and believing with the restrictive patterns and self-imposed limitations of a chapter that has reached its divine conclusion. And now, in this powerful moment, God is speaking to the people around you, to the angels specifically assigned to your next glorious chapter, to the divine orchestration already in magnificent motion on your behalf. And He is declaring with sovereign authority, "Loose him, loose her, let them go." Release them from those old agreements, those ancient stories, those restrictive garments of the past. You are not who the hardest season, the most agonizing chapter of your life, said you were. That was a lie whispered in the darkness. You are not merely the sum of what was done to you, the compilation of your wounds and your traumas. You are not behind schedule in your divine timing. You are not disqualified from your destiny, regardless of your past mistakes or perceived failures. You are not the unfortunate exception to the promise, watching as it manifests for everyone else but you. You, my friend, are the very person the promise was written for. You are the intended recipient, the chosen vessel, the one for whom this divine destiny was intricately crafted. And so, before this transformative message concludes, before you carry this potent word, this living seed of truth, into the hours and days ahead, I want you to do something that may feel incredibly simple, almost ritualistic. But I assure you, its power is anything but simple. I want you to place your hand, gently yet firmly, over your heart right now. Do this not as a mere empty ritual, not as a superstitious gesture, but as an intentional act of presence, a physical declaration that you are fully present, fully engaged, and fully receptive for the profound shift, the deep internal transformation that is about to occur inside you, in the very core of your being. Let it be an anchor for the truth. And now, speak these words with me, not just with your voice, but with the full conviction of your spirit, allowing them to resonate through every cell of your being. I release the story that was tragically written in my worst moment. I consciously, deliberately, and irrevocably release every single agreement I unknowingly made with lack, with abandonment, with smallness, with delay. I release the false identity that was tragically shaped by what was done to me, by the external circumstances and the wounds of the past, and I boldly step into the true, eternal identity that was lovingly established, divinely ordained, before I ever drew a single breath, before the world even began. I declare that I am not behind. I declare that I am not forgotten. I declare that I am not the exception to the promise. Instead, I am the living, breathing evidence of its fulfillment. I am the answer to prayers that were prayed over me, meticulously crafted for me, even before I fully understood the magnificent calling and profound purpose I was carrying. I break every agreement with every insidious lie that whispered this was too late, that this was too much to overcome, that I was too far gone to be redeemed. I receive my elevation, my breakthrough, my new season, with open hands and a whole, healed heart, ready to embrace it fully. I will not shrink when I am seen. Instead, I will shine with the divine light within me. I will not self-sabotage when I succeed. Instead, I will steward my blessings with wisdom and grace. I will not return to the grave clothes of a season that God has already irrevocably closed and sealed. I walk forward now, Not in striving, not in fear, not in the defensive posture of someone waiting to be disqualified or dispossessed, but in the full, unhurried, unashamed confidence of someone who knows deep within their bones that they were chosen, beloved, and ordained before the world began. It is finished, the old narrative is complete, and it is just beginning. Your true story is unfolding now. If this message arrived at the exact moment you needed it, leave one word in the comments that describes what shifted in you tonight. Just one word. Let that word be your declaration. Let it be the marker of the moment you decided to stop agreeing with the story that was keeping you small and started walking in the one that was written for you before you ever had to fight for anything. Your word matters. Leave it below.